One thing to get right out of the gate is that
Mhm.
one of the unique factors with animation that separates it from live action and writing books is that no matter how many shortcuts you use, it is such a time-consuming, arduous undertaking that can take months or years to make. And as an animator, I would know that for 100% certain. And you would likely need to have a full dedicated team to animate, storyboard, write, design, etc., just to make a feature-length movie, and would need time and money to produce such a project. Whether it is a studio making it or even an indie animated YouTube series funded through sites like Patreon. And yet, despite all of the grueling process that it takes to make these kinds of projects. There is still a public misconception with both the public and executives that animation is only for children and hence lesser quality. And unfortunately, most of the time, that's just from bad marketing and executives not understanding what the creators had in mind. Like the biggest example that I could think of is Transformers 1. Like, that's a really good movie, but they just marketed so bad. And that's why it underperformed because the marketing was terrible.
I could see that being a problem too, because and it's not only animation is not, and it's true, animation is not only for children. There's some really amazing looking animated movies that are semi, kind of meant to be for adults. There's some great animation that's yeah, I know that usually the big companies, corporate companies are always saying oh, animation's only for kids. I'm like, I mean, if you look at the old animated, like those old, very old animated shorts, like the Looney Tune shorts and all those things, those are meant for adults. Like the Flintstones was meant to be like an adult show at the time.
Well, well, to be
Yeah.
more precise, it was
Hmm.
marketed as a family
Yeah.
store. It was marketed as a family cartoon that both kids and adults watch it. Now it seems
True.
like there seems to be this weird warped perception that it's only for children. And it's like I have no like what the heck? What did we just go backwards for some reason?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's another good thing is like older animation or even like animation from the 40s and the like even the 30s and like the golden age of animation. There was a long period of time where some of that stuff was a little bit more, I don't want to say racy, but like especially Flintstones, that's a good example. It especially was more of a family comedy because there was like terms or there was like I can't give me a second. I'm trying to think right off the top of my head. There was like some of the stuff like alluding to I can't I know what I'm talking about
Like
here
it's
because
sometimes
I watched those cartoons. That's the thing.
like some of it you would definitely 100% not even show it today. Like that's
You
though
yeah
there are
you
definitely stuff in there that you would definitely not show today, but it's just back then it was just a lot more
and yeah
lenient.
you couldn't show it. I mean, also I would say that there was some of these the point of like some of these cartoons were more geared towards possibly even adults is because even back then, you had some of these commercials where you had cartoon characters like Fred Flintstone or I wouldn't say Scooby Doo, but you have some of these like 1960s, 50s, 60s cartoons. Like they had like Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble like selling like doing a cigarette ad. They have some of these characters that are like your kids would watch it on TV and you would watch it on TV and they're like in between like in a commercial break, they would be selling cigarettes and all that kind of stuff. So it's like that's the thing. It's like that is a little bit of the part of it. That goes for Looney Tunes too. There's allusions to cigarettes. You know, there was a lot of I wouldn't say sexual like innuendo. There was sexual innuendo and like some of this stuff, like one of the most popular Looney Tunes shorts was the opera short, I believe. And
Mhm.
there's some stuff in that that's could be considered very racy today. So, that's the thing too. And I think, and even back then it was very experimental. And
Yeah.
I think it was a thing that lasted for a good like 30, 40 years where not only were some of these characters like not only directly made to sell a product. I mean,
Mhm.
heck, look at Flintstones now. Probably most kids will only recognize the Flintstones from the cereal box, compared to, kids
Mhm.
that are a little bit older recognize them from watching them like on reruns or Boomerang, or their parents had like a home video or something. Then you get to kind of jumping an era, you go to like the 80s. Well, actually, even the 70s kind of had some of it too. Theirs was a lot more. How can we copy this cartoon and we make profit after that cartoon?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
but going back and jumping forward to like stuff like in the 80s, you had situations where like characters were directly made to sell product. And I think that's why, in a sense, like some of these cartoons, or like, yeah, some of these cartoons have such hard staying power, and why we are, unfortunately, nostalgia's kind of killed any kind of, sorry, I need to mute that. Nostalgia's kind of killed like any like ideas for other stuff, unfortunately, nowadays, because you have like a barrage of like 80s properties like He-Man, Transformers, Thundercats, all this kind of stuff. It's like always it has this staying power because it was like bombarded in the faces of these people that were kids, like these 50-year-old men that were kids watching, you know, Lion-O fight Mum-Ra, or He-Man fight Skeletor, or Optimus fighting Megatron, Ghostbusters, all this stuff because they marketed it. Some of these movies should not have been marketed to like, kids of that day,
Mhm.
obviously. But they were marketing this type of stuff to kids. And that's probably why you have like this kind of like stuff from like 30, 40 years ago that is still being like shoved down like our collective throats, metaphorically and sometimes quite literally, because it's it was done the same back then. Sorry,
That
that
is.
went on a tangent about.
Oh, that's okay. That brings me to one of my points is, the problem is with animation is, that it's basically you just gave everyone the example of what is the cash grab situation. And I think the problem is that's the problem with animated studios these days is because they are very reliant on these old IPs. And when they're so reliant on old IP that they don't want to take risks of creating something new and something that could be big, then they either are getting money because of the old IP or they just don't want to take risks because they're just not wanting to be creative and they don't want to take risks. So,
Yeah, that actually, if you really think about it, this over-reliance on over-reliance on already existing IP is kind of a problem with the industry in general, not even just in animation.
true.
But yeah, yeah, and especially with like with when yeah, actually when Drew was mentioning about how when the shows that watched as a kid that was shoved down our throat, that now people are so like nostalgic for it, and it's like, maybe there is some staying power to shoving a bunch of merchandise. But it's like, but the and and we could probably have a whole other discussion about merchandising in general in a future episode.
Yes.
But what I will say is that when something
Mhm.
is just purely made to fund merchandise, that could unfortunately, that could be used as a crutch
Hmm.
to hide a lot of to hide a lot of the ideas with the hide a lot of issues with the project and what
True.
is happening.
True.
And
I
yeah,
was gonna.
and
Oh,
well, another thing of how animation could be considered a cash grab is especially when you see all of these like low budget animated movies coming out and it's that everybody forgets in a year or so. It's kind of like that could also just not help at all.
Hmm.
yeah, it definitely doesn't. And that kind of stepping back a little bit, there was this whole era, especially when like Scooby-Doo came out, or like even the mid to late 60s. I mean, look at I'm trying to think right off the top of my head. Let me just do like one little bit of research.
Although
Yep.
while you're doing that, one other thing I do want to mention is that even with this lasting staying power of IP, thanks to largely the shoving of merchandising in people's faces, it's ultimately not sustainable long term because not only do we now have a situation where people just need to stop buying so much, it's also like there comes a point where there needs to be some kind of new ideas. There needs to actually be something because nostalgia or running to the past is not going to fix anything. It's like time only goes forward, and trying to constantly go to the past to find something more simpler in life is not healthy for all of us. And yeah, that got a little philosophical for a discussion about animation, but it's like I don't know where else.
But it's so true. It's so true. I think if people the point, even when you think about the history of like the Disney animation and how Pixar became and how all these different things were happening, Pixar knew that animation had to grow. That's why they did the 3D animation when they did at the time, because they knew it was going to grow. Whereas, and yes, we still love the 2D animated movies, but then Disney decided to turn from 2D to 3D animation. And I think the problem is they really need to explore different styles of animation. Spider-Verse, is that the series called the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, Spider-Verse.
Yeah, the Spider-Verse series. That played around with style. There's a mini series that actually inspired me to create my own high fantasy series called there's a show called The Wheel of Time, and The Wheel of Time had an animated mini series, and I loved that look. It was kind of like they merged live action with animation in a watercolor kind of style. It's really interesting. Definitely check it out, guys.
I
Um, yeah.
I was gonna say, and you kind of tend to notice ever since like they go started going more heavily on the animated content,
Mhm.
was a lot of their animated content kind of just has a samey art style.
Mm,
It's very, I don't want to say frozen, like trying to be the same art style all the time. I want like, I mean, we obviously are seeing some new projects that have a different art style.
mhm.
Unfortunately, it's censored by current, worldviews. With there's that new Something and Go cartoon. But I just want to step back because I do remember I just wanted to fact check my source. So there was this kind of era with it's kind of going on samey cartoons. Was back in the 70s. It was right around the time Scooby-Doo came out. There was a lot of Scooby clones, and sometimes it was even made by the same people, Hanna-Barbera. They're no they're no saint when it comes to making similar content or Viacom or all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Like there was it's like a Dune Buggy cartoon. There, Jabberjaw. You know, you have all these like cartoons that were made in this day back then that
Hmm.
were blatantly, even from the same studio, blatantly ripping off this cartoon. I do
Hmm.
find it kind of funny that Jellystone even like that the cartoon Jellystone even did a thing about having all these Scooby clone shows end
Hmm.
up being like part of the cartoon in a way, even with like Scooby Doo, like the characters as themselves too. I just it's a really it was a really weird time, and it like just animation as itself back then was a really weird time from having like you have this one show. Well, even kind of stepping back even a little bit more, Flintstones and Jetsons. You know, these
Hmm.
shows show like aired together around the same time, and they're literally copies of each other, but like the concept is flipped of like Stone Age, hyper futuristic. That was a weird thing, and kind of going back to the conversation because I didn't want to like detract from like Disney's like whole thing. Like you do see a lot of still see a lot of 2D animated shows, but there are a lot of them are still in like rigged type
Hmm.
like animation, which is I wish like we could go back. I know it's a little bit more expensive to do some of the 2D like hand drawn animation. I kind of miss that. I feel like there's a little bit of this is one thing I kind of wanted to bring up. It is that still that kind of fear going on right now where a lot of people want to use AI or like artificial intelligence to just make art for themselves in like a short term, you know, just kind of make the neurons go instead of making an actual project. There's the whole thing with
Which bringing back to another point of one of my points here was is the problem of using AI within like because of the Studio Ghibli situation.
that.
And
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
mhm,
Wait,
There were so many people that are using AI to make Studio Ghibli style animations or Studio Ghibli looking like profile pictures, and it's the most soulless, like I don't want to not vapid isn't the right word, but there's just so many people making it's slop. Not even
yeah,
good like funny haha slop. It's like
like, how do you live with yourself, slop?
yeah, it's like especially when you get like rich people. Some Mike Tyson even used it. It's like Mike, I'm pretty sure you are a millionaire. $45 for a commission for something Ghibli styled is like pocket change to you. I don't know why you're not just like buying an art piece of art from like somebody. I don't know why you're using a computer. But
the person who created the studio for Studio Ghibli has already come out and said this is so disrespectful. This is like it's an absolute disgrace. It's disrespectful. And I hope the guy who created Studio Ghibli, I hope he sues them. I really hope he sues them because and not only because of Studio Ghibli, but it should be all the other animation, all the other even Disney should like sue these people because it shouldn't be they should not have the points to take away a style that was made long before they ever showed up.
I mean,
So,
unfortunately, Bob Iger wants to try to use it in some way or some form. It's like Bob, you
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 know,
you run you run a multi-billion dollar company
mhm.
that has been known for doing animation. Like I understand experimenting. I understand experimenting, but it's like you're taking away jobs just to save a couple bucks. Like, come on. You know, you want I the, until like somebody like ticks off the wrong person
Mhm.
with AI,
Yeah,
this is going to be hovering over us for a while. And
that's true.
it's
Yeah.
sad. It's sad.
And especially now where all all the industry is right now. Like it's in a bit of an identity crisis right now. It's
Mhm.
at a crossroads, but it doesn't want to go on the crossroads because it doesn't know what the frick it wants to do. So it's kind of self-destructing on itself by doing all of these really stupid short-term gain decisions that ultimately not only no one will remember, but
Mhm.
also it won't lead to it'll just lead to you'll lose money from it because nobody will care.
Yeah, look at
Everybody
Snow
will
White.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Look at that monstrosity.
especially with the live action movies. It's like we get it. The live action movies sell. You're making live action movies with your superheroes and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, there's a market. It's I just yeah, there, it frustrates me.
And
It, it
oh,
and
you were gonna say something.
yeah, it's just it is frustrating. And there was a point brought up where it's like at the beginning, marketing or um marketing, merchandising wasn't like the sole like thing. It's just like now it kind of feels like that's half of where animation just gets its whole like
And
budget from. You have
Hmm.
cartoons, you have not long standing, but cult classic cartoons that were
Hmm.
canceled because
they
of
couldn't sell
like
toys.
poor merchandising. So, look at Young Justice. Young Justice was a like brilliant cartoon in the early to mid 2010s, and it was taken off the air for a season. I think it was two or three because it didn't sell well, like toy wise on the shelves. It's like That's not. That's so dumb. And I
Yeah.
think
And
it's kind of a sad thing to see like something that the whole part of the industry wasn't even part or like a concept in the industry become the main thing that like budgets the industry and all this kind of stuff, or you know how like they get their money back. It's just really sad. And
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, we didn't sell enough product for all this kind of stuff. We're not going to make another movie. It's like
yeah.
it didn't sell well enough. We're not going to make another thing.
Yeah.
And
That's just dumb. It's sad. So
yeah, and that could also be another part of why there's such a huge misconception about animation is only for children is because they over rely on merchandising, making things into like series long commercials just to market a piece of plastic that they're not even going to play with it forever. And it's going to
Hmm.
end up in a landfill somewhere. It's like, it's just not worth it.
I mean,
Like, it's,
looking back at another conversation we had a little while back,
yeah. But,
and probably hopefully later too. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Again,
Yeah.
we could have a whole conversation about merchandising and how
Hmm.
really I think heavily merchandising things, like especially animation, is just so overkill. It's like you guys need to stop. And and actually, this was another thing that was brought up by
Hmm.
Dryw that
Hmm.
another reason why animation is often like misconstrued as being for children is because of these live action remakes. They're turning animation into live action, I guess because live action makes it more mature when it's like, no, it's not. It just ends up creating more, it just ends up creating a mess than it actually is. At
The
least
it's
thing
for at
kind
is,
of
least for most of them.
I
sorry.
was gonna say it's kind of got a little bit of a Katzenberg kind of effect. I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
really goes back all the way to Jeffrey Katzenberg, like
Hmm.
getting Robin Williams for for the Goofy, not almost said the Goofy movie. That is kind of
Sure.
poignant too. Something happened. Having marketing Robin Williams star power for
Aladdin.
Aladdin
The
and having
G,
all this
yeah.
kind of stuff and ruining like some of his movies that he was trying to get like market around there. Like Katzenberg had his whole thing for a good like decade or two where he was marketing. The only thing they would could think about how to get the marketing to work was getting a big name star. There's that new Goofy movie documentary that just came out where apparently Jeffrey Katzenberg wants Steve Martin to play Goofy, or they wanted the guy who I can't remember the guy who plays Bill Farmer. They wanted Bill Farmer to do Goofy in his regular voice, even though, Bill Farmer's voice is pretty close. Like I would say Goofy's like a little bit more like a caricature of his voice, but it's really a Katzenberg type of effect, and a lot of like Hollywood just kind of falls into the kind of thing. Like, okay, you know, kind of stepping off to the side a little bit. It's still kind of in the kind of sphere. That's
Mhm.
why you get so many big name, profitable name stars in
Mhm.
some of these movies that it's like, who I just seen a tweet about it. You have so the guy, I don't know if it was no, the guy from Ant-Man the Wasp, right? The
Mhm.
bad guy that was trying to sell the lab. Like he's an astounding actor, but
Mhm.
he was just kind of like there for like a two-bit role or like, John Bad Guy and all that kind of stuff. I can't even remember like if he was based off of a specific like villain. But
Mhm.
it's just like this is the problem with, you know, especially with animation too, is sometimes it was very bad during like the early to mid 2000s. I mean, I love Ice Age. I love Shrek. I love some of these like DreamWorks movies and all that kind of stuff. Well, a lot of the time, a lot of these movies just that's how they could bank off of it. It's been kind of plaguing the industry because you have
Mhm.
just actors
Mhm.
playing
Yeah.
characters instead of like voice actors who can put an inflection on their voice or they can do like seven different characters,
Yeah.
bigging up Frank Welker. I mean, look at Frank Welker. He's been doing voiceover stuff and all that kind of stuff since the 60s, the late
Mhm.
60s. And, he does like Foley, like voice Foley or like voice sounds. Like D. Bradley Baker does a similar kind of thing where it's like, you know, that's why, with the good thing with animation is you don't need to necessarily have the actor be the main
Mhm.
selling point. You can
Yeah.
have the character be the main selling point and then have a voice actor play the character and probably give it a little bit more soul than say like some of these movies from the early to mid 2000s or even the late 90s where it was actor doing actor's own voice.
Mhm.
Similar type of thing. I seen your reaction when I said Katzenberg wanted Steve Martin to play Goofy. It's like it's such a weird thing, especially
Yeah.
when you have like long-standing characters being played by big name actors. Look at Mario, you know.
Yeah.
That's a thing too. It's like so like yeah, Chris played Mario okay. Seth Rogen played Donkey Kong okay. Hey, but it's just, you know, sometimes we don't necessarily need a huge name. Like I get it to sell the movie. I kind of get it. But it's also sometimes
It's
these actors play these characters so flat. It's kind of
Mm.
and also
depressing.
and also now it feels like they're just using star power as a crutch to just not actually get like actors. And now we have situations where you have actors who are not even playing characters. They're kind of just playing themselves. And it's so weird.
That's
Like,
what.
for example, the recent Minecraft movie that came out, which for some reason it came out now instead of like, I don't know, when it first jumped off, like what the frick is going on? It's like you can tell no one wanted to be there. Like these are just people that were kind of just dragged into the production because executives hold them at gunpoint, probably. But it's like I'm joking, but that's kind of what it
No.
feels like. They were just it feels like they were forced to be there. They didn't want to be there. And that's what it feels like a lot of these like mainstream not even just with animation, but just with like movies in general. It's kind of like no one wanted to be there. Nobody wanted to
Jenna,
work on this, but they were just
they,
dragged there.
they
Welcome
were
back.
there. They were
Welcome back.
there for the check. They were there for the check.
I was saying, welcome back, crappy video game movies. We're so back. I mean, I said it, I still say it's not Sonic 3 was still pretty good, but it is kind of funny that like, the market before, I mean, it still is still kind of prevalent to have like old 80s cartoon animated movies or whatever coming back. I mean, we're looking at He-Man coming out in a couple months. But it's just kind of funny that like we had this era of like terrible, terrible like video game movies that didn't understand the market, didn't understand what made the movie or the video game good and marketable, and they're just like, I mean, all respect to Tom Holland, but Uncharted. Look at Uncharted. That's
That's a
we're getting
generic
off.
Marvel movie. It's a Marvel movie.
Yeah, he is right behind me, isn't he?
Yeah.
But
Nice.
it is kind of still kind of on topic for like animated movies because there's I'm trying to remember there was still some like more recent animated like movies that came out. I mean, I haven't seen much in that kind of realm, but I will kind of pedal back about a decade. I still think um that the 2011 movie Wreck-It Ralph, for all of its issues with like casting for certain actors, casting like recognizable name actors instead of possibly getting character actors, you know, that is still a strong, like powerful movie. Like,
Yeah.
and then they go and ruin it by making it about memes in the second one and making it about the
Yeah.
internet in the second one. It's just, I think there's a little problem with like animation where sometimes, because some of these things don't take these things take a while. These things obviously could take up to 4 or 5 years, maybe even 10 or
Yeah.
more, depending on the project.
Yeah.
And sometimes when they're trying to cash grab or try to ride the wave of a certain or current or recent fad, sometimes they end up like being like a year or so behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back to Wreck-It Ralph. Ralph Breaks the Internet. He had all these memes that were like a decade behind it, like dead memes, like
Yeah. It
from a
felt more
decade
like
prior.
it really that film really exemplifies the how do you do fellow kids vibe when it's like
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
It
And
yeah.
actually, I find it interesting that you mentioned Wreck-It Ralph because it's like I was obsessed with that movie at one point.
It's a good, like the first one is so good.
First one, yeah.
I would have rather the sequel be about console games or whatever, like,
Yeah.
but no, they had to jump straight to modern day with the internet and everything. But that's a different.
But actually, speaking of the internet
Mhm.
and wanting to stray into a little bit of all is not lost despite how weird it is. It's like not only have I have seen like there are animated shows and movies that are still coming out, obviously. Like,
Hmm.
for example, Ketchup Entertainment was able to get the distribution rights for Coyote versus Acme. So that's pretty good. But
Yeah,
secondly,
it is.
secondly, uh, going back to the internet aspect, one thing that has helped animation stay relevant is with indie animation, especially with the
Yes.
age of the internet. It
Yes.
has definitely shown that there are other ways to publish your work without corporations looking over your shoulder. And that is a good thing, as it has
Hmm.
allowed creators to have breathing room to express themselves without fear of executive meddling. But
Yeah.
at the same time, and I say this as someone who deeply cares about this, because I know they
Hmm.
can be better than this, um, I'm also concerned about it because on one hand, if it is one or two people working on an animated show, then at least I understand having things like limited stock merch, like that's understandable, especially if all the funds from that and Patreon goes exclusively to the singular animated series that they're working on. But on the other, if for the majority of the time all you do is promote various merch and showcase random animation and artwork that has nothing to do with the main project at hand, I'll start to question if there is even any clear working schedule at hand at all to get on track to completing the project. Which, yeah, like I said, we could probably get into the whole merchandising deal in the next episode, in
And
another
it's
episode. And
Yeah.
especially becomes complicated when there's a small studio that is working on two or three projects at once that may or may not have a lot of people working on individual projects in entirely dedicated groups and potentially negatively affecting shows when animators and crew members are being shifted around a lot and diverting attention from projects that desperately need it, becoming delayed as a result. I understand crap happens and that animation takes a long time to make, but this is why it is important to have a clear direction of what you really want from the project, where you want the project to be, a very clear direction of what you want the project to be, and and efficiently organize the work properly so you don't accidentally procrastinate on things unrelated to your project because I know how easy that can be to procrastinate on animation because like I said it takes a very very long time. So this is why even if you don't know a deadline on when the full project is completed, at least create some kind of eternal team deadline so that everybody can at least stay on track. And this is actually coming from an average viewer perspective. And understanding this perspective is important because
mhm.
that is going to be the majority of your audience, whether these people are aware of it or not. So this perspective is just as valid as a Patreon backer or a YouTube channel member. And
Mhm.
again, I come from a place that I want the indie scene to be better because I know it can be better.
Yes.
And yeah,
I was gonna say, and I know that one of these indie cartoons does have merch. Actually, funnily enough, it got a import figure. It was so popular is Gooseworks' Amazing Digital Circus
yeah.
and Zurel's Monkey Wrench. Like those are like you can really tell, even though sometimes with Amazing Digital Circus, it is very much internet humor type show. It's still funny. It's a good show. It's wacky, but that's kind of what some of the modern animation. I don't want to say it's totally missing, but it's like it's missing. It's missing it sometimes. It's good to have like people who are dedicated to the art, like make this type of stuff. And just having like it is so weird though to have like indie animations get all the way up to stuff like an import figure. Pomni got a Nendoroid, which is that's a very topical. I think it's just so weird to me.
But I think this
Once,
also,
Hmm?
oh, keep going.
but that's also another thing of just how powerful the internet is,
Mhm.
especially when you have a very large community of people, especially in the animation community where there's just a whole lot of people, and they are more than ready to help out projects and such.
Not only that, but it's not only just the animated industry, but also the indie comic creator industry too. Because to be honest with you guys, I have never felt more community help than from indie artists and people who like table at events and people who have created their own comic books. Like they having the idea of having an indie group of like animators, comic creators, what have you, who will help you. Because it's almost as if the indie community, sorry,
The indie
the,
community like helps
yeah,
out each
the,
other.
yeah, they really want to help each other. And I think that's, while one's going down, the other one's trying to get up there, which is
Yeah.
great.
It really shows how, the people that love and respect the art form actually want the art form to survive, even though the big
Yes.
studios, might want to try to save a couple bucks and use computers to create everything without actually hiring animators or 3D modelers or all that kind of stuff. We're kind of running
True.
short on time, so this is I think
or or even or what's interesting is that even with the live action stuff, they still utilize animation. So it's
It's
like,
true.
what is even happening
they,
here?
they
What is
call it live
happening here?
action. They call the Lion King movies live action, but that is still 100% animation. They have
Yeah.
Thanos show up in these movies, but he is 100% a CGI'd up like 8 foot tall, 9 foot tall Josh Brolin. We are
Yeah.
actually running short on time, so I'm gonna edit this up and get this out for Mondays.